Some names in history have shaped the world by staying behind the scenes. These names derive their power not from appearing on the stage, but from the secret mechanisms operating in the background. Allen Dulles was one of them, the first civilian director of the CIA, one of the greatest strategists of the Cold War, a genius who played world politics on his own chessboard. But he was also the architect of covert operations and unethical moves. One of the most trusted figures in the United States during the Cold War, Dulles was a leader who instilled fear in his enemies and kept his allies on their toes. But who was this man? What made him so powerful? How did his secret operations and controversial decisions penetrate so deeply into world history? Some people write history, while others mold it in the shadows. Allen Dulles was the shadow man who shaped history. Allen Dulles is recognized as the architect of America's modern intelligence world and the first civilian director of the CIA. But his story is not only one of a career full of achievements, but also of complex strategies and morally controversial decisions. Dulles was born into a diplomatic family in 1893. However, it was not only his deep-rooted family background that put him on the pages of history, but also the revolutionary approaches he brought to the world of intelligence with his extraordinary decisions. One example is Operation Ajax, which led to the overthrow of Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953. This operation demonstrated not only Dulles' intelligence, but also his pragmatic and ethically boundary-pushing approach. An interesting turning point in Dulles' career was his appointment as the first civilian director of the CIA. This began a professional transformation in the field of intelligence, challenging the conventions of the time. In his first days in office, he is rumored to have said to his inner circle, "All other parts of the government can surrender to politics, but the CIA must remain independent." Allen Dulles is one of the most influential and controversial intelligence leaders of the 20th century. As one of the longest-serving directors of the CIA, he directed major operations around the world, shaped the course of the Cold War, and left a deep mark on the shaping of international relations. However, Dulles' achievements not only increased the CIA's influence, but he is also remembered for actions that pushed his own ethical boundaries. Dulles' role in the Cold War allows us to define him not only as a spy, but also as a shadow architect of world politics. Established in 1947, the CIA became an organization that not only gathered intelligence for the US government's foreign policy, but also actively manipulated the world. However, the CIA's international influence took on a whole new dimension with Allen Dulles' appointment as director in 1953. Dulles played an important role in making the CIA a key instrument in the war against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. However, Dulles' CIA was not only an intelligence organization, but also a vast operational network. It involved a range of complex and dangerous activities, from overthrowing governments to organizing propaganda campaigns. One of Dulles' best-known operations is Operation Ajax. This operation is considered the CIA's first major foreign intervention. The covert intervention to keep Shah Reza Pahlavi in power was also an example of Dulles' transformation of the CIA into a tool that not only gathered intelligence but also directly intervened in the internal affairs of countries. As head of the CIA, Allen Dulles played a crucial role in opposing the construction of the Berlin Wall. During the tense years of the Cold War, Berlin had become a border that epitomized the divide between East and West. Dulles tried to prevent the rise of this wall by heading the CIA, which was developing strategies to weaken Soviet power in East Germany. Before the Berlin Wall was built in 1961, the division of Berlin symbolized the ideological war between East and West Germany. West Berlin remained a capitalist island, free from the influence of the Soviet Union. At this critical time in the Cold War, the CIA in West Berlin was engaged in deep espionage against the communist regime. Dulles launched operations to consolidate intelligence networks in West Germany and reduce Soviet influence in East Germany. Dulles' diplomatic skills during the Berlin crisis were not limited to espionage. Dulles established close relations with West Germany and developed strategies for the defense of West Berlin. CIA agents in West Germany monitored the strategic movements of the Soviets in East Germany and gathered information for the defense of West Berlin. Some of Dulles's direct interventions during the Berlin crisis were part of a wider chain of covert operations than the Cold War against the building of the Berlin Wall. The CIA's increased intelligence activities in West Germany became one of West Berlin's main channels of resistance in the period leading up to the construction of the Berlin Wall. Dulles adopted a strategy of psychological warfare against the Soviet Union during the construction of the Berlin Wall. As the importance of West Berlin grew, the CIA took operational initiatives to support anti-regime movements in East Germany. At the same time, in order to psychologically influence the inhabitants of West Berlin, the West became a symbol of freedom and the fight against communism. In the meantime, with the construction of the Berlin Wall, the CIA continued to manage the resistance in West Berlin and the CIA's internal operations. Allen Dulles's strategy against the Berlin Wall was a more subtle, diplomatic, and intelligence war rather than direct military intervention. The CIA's network of agents in West Germany became an important tool for dealing with the Soviet threat in East Germany. Allen Dulles's diplomatic skills are often equated with his espionage and intelligence management. However, Dulles was not only a spy, but also a master strategist. Amidst the tensions of the Cold War, one of Dulles's distinguishing characteristics was his ability to outwit his opponents not only through military moves, but also through psychological games. In this sense, his foreign policy strategies often resembled a game of chess. As a diplomat, his ability to control his enemies with one move on the chessboard earned him worldwide respect. Dulles's chess game with a German diplomat, in which he drew conclusions from his enemy's style of play, demonstrates his skill in the world of intelligence. Such stories show how deeply Dulles was able to analyze foreign policy and how successful he was in understanding the intentions of his opponents. These games were not just on the chessboard. Dulles saw every move as a strategic step in international relations. Dulles's influence at the CIA is unquestionably a success story, but these successes were often crowned with actions that crossed ethical boundaries. Under Dulles's leadership, the CIA not only waged a war against the Soviet Union, but also used violence and manipulation to spread America's ideological goals around the world. However, these actions sometimes posed a threat to America's democracy, freedom, and ethical standards, leading Dulles to question his own conscience. CIA operations in Latin America in particular created some of Dulles's most controversial moments. The operations in Guatemala in 1954 show how the CIA was used to overthrow a government against the will of the people. Such operations are a testimony to how deeply the CIA intervened in the internal affairs of countries. Dulles often pushed ethical boundaries to win the Cold War, placing him at the center of wider criticism. In conclusion, the story of Allen Dulles paints a portrait not only of an intelligence officer, but also of a power player and strategist. But this power is defined not only by who wields it, but also by how it is wielded. Dulles's actions are a reminder that power often pushes ethical boundaries, and that outcomes cannot be judged solely in terms of winners. The question of how important ethical responsibilities are for strong leadership is one of the great debates in Dulles's history. Dulles's place will be remembered not only as one of the key figures in the history of intelligence, but also as emblematic of how the world was shaped by a much deeper, complex, and sometimes dark power.